we just wanted to be able to reach out to you from the police department and talk about some of the things that we are doing in our police department, your police department, to prepare our officers to make good decisions. And there's going to be times where we do have to respond to resistance, but we wanted you to know exactly what we're doing. Over the last several days, we've received many, many questions from concerned citizens. There's a lot of folks out there that are hurting, and we understand that. And our hearts are broken for you. Our hearts are broken for some of the things that are going on in this nation. And what we're going to try to do is go through some of the questions here, and by just explaining what our police department does, hopefully we'll cover a lot of the questions you have. But I do want to just kind of start out with one question that has been a prevailing question. We've had a lot of phone calls and emails and messages asking us if we are against police violence. And, you know, it's kind of a mind-boggling question for us, because you're talking to an agency here in Carlisle made up of professionals. So when we hear a question like that, we think, well, absolutely, we are entirely against police violence. We are entirely against police brutality. We stand firmly against that. Now, those of you that were waiting for the answer to that question, please don't just leave the meeting now. We'd like you to stick around, because, you know, we can say that. We can say that we're against it, but we really want to show you this evening, as we take your time here a little bit, we want to show you how we have put things in place to show you that we are against it. So if you look across the nation, there's roughly 750,000 law enforcement officers nationwide, comprising probably 18,000 agencies. Those numbers change a little bit. But what we really want to point out to you is here in Pennsylvania, there's roughly 12,000 different law enforcement agencies. Out of those 12,000 agencies, there's about 117 that have achieved what's called accreditation. We happen to be one of those agencies. Now, accreditation is something that we are very proud of. It's a lot of work. We have regular inspections. We have to reach certain standards and policies and procedures and the way we do things to be able to maintain that accreditation and achieve that accreditation to begin with. So we're very proud of that. Out of 12,000 agencies, we're one of the 117 that have achieved that. Now, that may not mean a lot to some of you, because some of you may think, well, it's probably just law enforcement agencies patting other law enforcement agencies on the back. We've even heard that. But the PLEAC, the organization that does it, I would argue that even by the fact that only 117 agencies out of 1,200 were able to achieve this, it's not easy. It is not easy to achieve, but your police department here in Carlisle has achieved that. And it is because of the good policies and the procedures that we have put in place and the standards that we maintain as an agency, not just with paperwork, but with the way we do things, our equipment, our training, the professionalism that we're able to show. We actually have to show proof of each compliant action. As we go through our policies and procedures, yes, we may have all the right paperwork together, but then as PLEAC comes in and inspects us, they want to see that we are complying. They want to see examples for each one of those policies, so we can show them how we are complying with everything from paperwork, again, to training, to documenting use of force, documenting evidence, all the different steps that they may be examining. There's a few hundred different bullet points that they're examining in us, and we have maintained that for several years now. We have actually achieved accreditation many years in a row. But that is, again, something we're proud of, because it shows that your Carlisle Police Department is not just the average agency. We have standards that we have set and standards that we're living up to that are much higher than 99% of the other law enforcement agencies, even just in Pennsylvania. You know, this badge is more than just a symbol to us. Most of your police officers, we started off, again, most of them started off serving their country in a variety of different military services. We started off serving our country, and now we're here to serve this community. So when we look at this badge, we wear it with pride. We wear it not as a symbol of how we're better than anybody else, or something that distances us from the population we serve. It is a reminder of who we are supposed to be. It's a reminder that we are out there serving the public. We are out there to protect. We are out there to help people. We're out there to make decisions on a regular basis throughout our days that hopefully contribute to the community rather than detract from the community.
Thanks, Dave. I'll take it from here. We're going to discuss one of the main points I wanted to express to everybody is that we need to find the right people for the job, and our policy doesn't start when the person is hired. It starts actually beforehand. We have a very diligent process to even get applicants into our department. We start with recruiting in an attempt to find the right person for the job. We've reached out to minorities and minority universities and colleges. We have advertising that goes out. We've done recruiting missions to colleges, police academies, universities to draw in the types of people that we are looking for, the perfect fit for our department. In fact, Chief Landis actually did a recruiting video here the last go around, and he equated it to, he's a Marine, so the few, the proud is his motto, and he's brought that to us also, to the Carlisle Police Department. Like we said, there's 33 of us, and we're very proud to be who we are, and you're darn lucky to get in and work with us because the standards are set high, and they should be high. So that's our mission, is to recruit people that can live up to those standards. The way we do that is obviously being civil service, we have to have an exam. So we'll give a written exam along with a physical agility test. The physical agility test is set by state standards. We have a unique process with the written test. We went with a company that uses questions that not only test cognitive ability, but also give us retrospective into their personality, their belief system, their decision-making abilities. And we use that because old tests that we had been using were just knowledge tests or memorization. And we didn't feel that was enough to show us who were the right people for this job. Once candidates get through the written part of the test, if they score high enough, they come in for an oral examination. And again, we've recently made some good changes to this process. We enlisted the help of a psychologist to write the questions for us. We sat down with leaders of the police department and told her what we were looking for, what we needed in good police officers. And she went through and helped us structure questions that would bring out the qualities of these people in the interview process. And that interview process is unique because of the civilian interaction that occurs. Not only are police officers interviewing these candidates, we had civilians also in the process with us. We had Professor Rojas from Shippensburg University was with us this last time, and Robert Susky from the U.S. War College was also in on the panel. And we find that is helpful to have outsiders also in on that process who are actually scoring these people and giving their opinion of their abilities. So once that process is over and we've reached who we think we have as the best through the written and through the oral parts, some are given conditional offers of employment, and we go forward with a psychological examination. Very important part of the process. We send them to a doctor who has previous law enforcement experience, a professor up at Lebanon Valley College, and he has his own practice. So he's very versed in law enforcement issues and the things that are going to be needed for a good police officer. So we do that. And then as that's going on, the detectives and I will conduct a very thorough background check. And this just isn't a check into the person themselves. We do the standard criminal history, credit checks, that type of thing, but we're looking deeper than that. We go to neighbors, former employers, former classmates, teachers, social media. We dive into social media accounts, get onto the internet and find anything we can about this person that might be a problem for us. We've definitely found some problems and eliminated some people through these backgrounds. When they get through the background process, the final step prior to hiring, we make everybody submit to a polygraph test. This is a new procedure that came along with Chief Landis. It is a time-tested method to really get to the character of a person. And we feel that this is the way to finalize that background, to verify the information we found, and to try to catch anything that we could have missed. Now, even though we do all that work and we put so much time into the background, because like I said, these issues that we're dealing with today don't start in the academy or don't start on the street. It starts with the person themselves. And that is the biggest challenge in hiring, basically anywhere, but in law enforcement, one of the biggest challenges is that your pool of candidates is coming from the human race. So we have human beings that are inherently flawed and do make mistakes and have problems. And we know that, and that's everybody. So we have to continue to keep an eye on people as they're going through and learning the job from us. So we have an FTO program, we have a probationary period for about a year that we still are molding these people into what we need them to be, and also double checking to make sure no mistakes are being made. And if we can correct them, we are. And if we can't correct them, we're going to get rid of them, because we need to make sure that they meet the standards of the department. We have a review process through the supervisors that keep track of every employee. Luckily, like we said, we have 33 officers. We're big enough to police the borough of Carlisle, and small enough that we can keep track of each other. Co-workers can keep an eye on each other. The supervisors are able to watch over and make sure that everybody's doing all right, because, you know, at times the job itself can become stressful. We send people to evaluations and psychologists after a critical incident to make sure that they're okay, to make sure that they haven't been affected by these traumatic events, so that they are safe to come back to the street and work with us. So we'll talk a little bit here about the internal investigations complaint process that happens with the police department. And there are many ways that complaints can come into us. We'll start with the basic ones. Coworkers are free to and encouraged to complain about other coworkers when they see something wrong. Every officer, and I've actually in the last few days, I've told officers this: if you see something going wrong, if you see something bad happening, it is your duty to step in and stop it. No matter the rank of the officer, no matter where you are, that's your duty to do so. If the officer sees something that doesn't need to have immediate intervention, they can report that from their sergeant all the way up. They can walk into the chief's office and tell him. Supervisors can do the same thing to the chief. And then, of course, the citizens have a right to make a complaint about anything that they feel is wrong. We have an online form. We have a form in the front of the lobby, and the chief has an open door policy that anybody at any time can come into the station. He'll sit down with you, he will talk to you, and we will look into the problem. We don't ignore problems. We take them head on, and we solve them as quickly as we can. So if an investigation is needed, what happens is the investigation will come to me, and I'm the detective assigned to handle the investigation under Lieutenant Lashall, who supervises that investigation. Immediately notification is made to the borough manager and legal counsel to let them know, hey, we are looking into something. Here's where we are right now. And step by step, we keep in touch with the borough manager and legal counsel. Once that investigation is done, and that investigation is run just as a criminal investigation would be run, evidence is collected, interviews are done, it would be handled just like a regular court case would be handled. If discipline is appropriate and the chief recommends that, again, that decision is passed up and discussed with legal counsel and the borough manager. And then we also have the ability, if we have an egregious violation, termination might be warranted or timely based on the history of the officer. And again, each step we're talking to the borough manager, legal counsel, and the Civil Service Commission to make sure that we are on the right track of what should be done. Okay, Steph.
Sergeant Freeman, I'm going to jump in there just to underscore a point you made about the civilian oversight through the borough manager's office, which is something that has changed significantly since home rule went to an effect. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the products, and I think the benefits of home rule, that it's provided this extra civilian direct oversight.
There's constant communication. There are times that we're seeking guidance. Sometimes we're just passing on information, but there's always a good communication between the two offices. Yes.
So then we get to the new officers. As the new officers come in, typically they are coming from the police academy. We are very aware of the standards at the police academy. Several of us are instructors at the police academy. So we know what is being taught there. We know how they can only do it with a broad brush up there, because they're working with officers that are going to go to all different agencies around. So one of the first things we do when we get a new officer in from the academy is we have a talk with them about, okay, these are all the things you learned at the academy, but now we're going to set you up to be an officer here in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, because we are not just any agency. We can't control what other agencies are doing out there, but we can control what's happening here in Carlisle with our police officers. So we let them know we raise the bar. We raise the bar from the time they leave the academy. We want to see the best quality out of them. And that starts with the field training. We have a robust field training program. It is 16 weeks long, and we are constantly revamping that training program, just like a lot of other things we do. I touched on PLEAC earlier. Everything we do, we are always aware of any changes that are going on nationwide, any new research that's out there, any new information that would indicate we need to revise things, any new information that would indicate that maybe we have been doing things well, but we can do it even better. We're constantly trying to revamp things. And our field training is no different. So we have a 16-week program where they are teamed up with a field training officer. During that time, they actually, it's set dates, they actually rotate to different field training officers. So that way, throughout that 16-week period, they may actually work with 4 different field trainers so that they can get a variety of the expertise that comes from the education, training, and experience of those different field training officers. Then that program is actually overseen by two sergeants, as a matter of fact, who help organize things, make sure all the paperwork is being done properly, make sure all aspects of the training program are efficient and up to the standards that we expect. And during that field training program, there's a lot of oversight on that trainee. Every single day they are evaluated. Every single day there's a written document completed at the end of their shift talking about things they did well, things they didn't do so well, things that they're going to get some extra training on. And sometimes it is something that may rise to the level where we're going to have to just put the brakes on a little bit and say, okay, we've had some heart-to-heart talks with people sometimes in the field training program, where we'll be able to go and say, okay, you did this, we're not going to tolerate that. You are starting to show signs that you're going down the wrong road, and we're not going to tolerate that here in Carlisle. You can be replaced. I mean, we make it that simple. That they can be replaced if they're going to go in a direction that we are not happy with and that we don't want to see out of our officers here in the Carlisle Police Department. We are trying to mold them to what the community expects of us here and what the chief expects out of his officers. We are integrating them into the police department, but also integrating them into the community. We are letting them know that they are going to be part of this community. Hopefully everything goes well and they do a great job, hopefully for the next 25 years or so. We want them to be a contributing part of the community. So we're trying to get that started right off the bat, get them on the right foot and set them up for success rather than failure, because we don't want them out there making mistakes, representing the police department, creating fear, creating any unnecessary stress whenever we're supposed to be the people out there helping people get through those stressful times. And we also take it very seriously that we're training up future leaders. We have a brand new officer right now, just started last week. We're already training him as a leader, because we know if things go well for him, he is going to be someday a leader in this police department. So we want to, again, get him off on the right foot. So we already have started talking to him about some of the things that go into leading officers and some of the responsibilities in making decisions, because ultimately every police officer, while we're out there too, we are a leader in the community. When we're dealing with the public, it's not fair for the public to get less quality out of an officer just because they don't have as much time on the street as maybe the old guys like Sergeant Friedman and I. So we want them to have the skill set to be able to go out there and handle situations with the right mindset.
I'll jump off the script here a little bit because I'm looking back at what we discussed on the internal investigations. I just wanted to, it's not on the slide, but I wanted to mention that there are performance evaluations done on a twice a year basis. Every 6 months, we're looking at officers. The sergeants are actually getting with the corporals and evaluating the officers. So this doesn't stop with new officers. Your entire career, you are getting evaluated every 6 months by your leaders. And when deficiencies are noted, they are put on the evaluation and they will be corrected by the next time, or disciplinary matters will be then taken. So I just wanted to add that, since we didn't discuss that, throughout your entire career, just because you got off FDO and just because you're off probation, you're not off the hook. Every 6 months, you are coming into the sergeant's office, and you're facing the things you've done well, you're facing the things you've done wrong. And, if training is needed, we will get you to training. If discipline is needed, you're going to be disciplined. But I just wanted to express that also, because we did forget to put that on the slide. Sorry, Sergeant Miller, back to you.
So again, we're bringing these folks in, these new officers, with just the understanding that we have high expectations from them. And they are joining a police department that overall we have high standards and high expectations of all of our officers. We focus a whole lot on training. There's many agencies out there that are actually, they wish they could conduct the amount of training that we do, because we're kind of known to do a lot of training. There is an organization that oversees police officer certification in Pennsylvania. It's called the Municipal Police Officers Education and Training Commission. And they set a lot of guidelines out there. They maintain, again, the certifications for all of us police officers in Pennsylvania. They require 16 hours minimum of training per year. We in the Carlisle Police Department feel like that is not even a place to start. We actually are probably the lowest number of hours one of our officers will get in a year is more like 80. And then of course it goes up from there, because we take training very seriously. It is not uncommon to, every single week, it's not uncommon to have an officer somewhere. They're either attending a training at another location, maybe they're out getting instructor certification so that they can come back and train the rest of the officers. Maybe we're ramping up a training in-house where we have one of our own in-house instructors. We have a lot of different officers that are proficient as instructors in many different specialties. But maybe we're lining up our own training in-house, and we'll rotate the department through in some type of logical method so that everybody gets that training. Sometimes we have officers doing online training for different certifications. We have right now, even with the restrictions with COVID, we have our officers going on the FEMA sites and the FEMA sites and many other sites out there taking online courses. They're taking advantage of the fact that, for right now, we really can't go many places. So we're continuing our training. We just revamped it a little bit, but we're continuing our training because we take training very seriously. We know that we can talk all day. We can have all kinds of procedures in place, and we can have all kinds of demands placed on our officers. But if we are not training them to effectively go out there and do the job that's expected of them, it's a failure on our part. So we take it very seriously from the top down. We want to mold their overall decision making, because when officers are out there, they're making decisions. That's the number one thing that they're doing, is making decisions out there. And sometimes, as you know, sometimes those are life and death decisions. But we want them to be equipped to be able to make the right decisions. We want them to have proficiency with all their different equipment. I'll touch on equipment a little bit more in the next slide, but we don't want to just hand them all the cool things that are out there and say, here, have fun with this. We want to take the time to make sure that they're proficient with it and that they know when to use it, how to use it. We want to make sure that they understand all the different tools that they have at their disposal to be able to handle an incident. And of course, we want to focus a whole lot on interpersonal skills. We're dealing with people. That's our product out there. Our officers are people, and the folks in the community, they're people. So the interpersonal skills are so important. And we have officers that have natural talent. They can just speak. They can really click with anybody. And then we have folks that maybe need a little more training in that. And we have everything in between. But we focus a lot of time on trying to train up the emotional intelligence. We try to look at bias. We've had a lot of questions here over the last few weeks about how we train related to racial bias. And I just want to address that a little bit. Again, that's kind of like the question about our how do we feel about excessive force? We look at bias as something that has to be addressed with every training. We've had a lot of people say, how many times a year do you train about bias? And honestly, it would be difficult to count because we have integrated it. It's not just a class that we attend. It's not just, every few months we have a speaker come in and talk to us about bias. This is something that we integrate in all of our training because it has to be part of our everyday decision making. It's not just a checkbox that we can say, hey, yes, we had a class in racial bias. because we understand it's so much more than that. It's so much more than even just racial bias. You can have an officer being a human being, and the human beings that we're dealing with on the street, bias can come in all different forms. It could be against somebody's race. It could be against somebody's ethnicity, age. It could be just age being, older people or down to children. It could be about special needs. There's all kinds of different bias that could exist on both sides. So we honestly address that, and we honestly train the officers to look at themselves so they can understand anything that is a stumbling block to how they are contributing to the community and how they are connecting with people. We need officers to understand, and we train them to understand the empathy that they have to have with the folks that we're dealing with out there. Because as you know, when people call us, a lot of times it's their worst day. So we train our officers to understand that particular event might be the worst thing going on in that person's life. Or if somebody else called us about that person, they may be struggling with who knows what. It could be emotional distress. It could be mental illness. It could be any number of different things that person's struggling with. And so the officer needs to have that awareness that they're dealing with human beings, and that they can make decisions to properly serve those folks, and to not escalate a situation, but to do exactly the opposite. Just be able to just step back and understand everything that's happening and make the right decisions based on that. And we want to show people respect. Everybody wants to be respected. We want to be respected. The people we're dealing with want to be respected. And until we have that empathy as we're dealing with folks, and until we can encourage empathy on both sides, it's very challenging to have mutual respect. So we cannot properly serve if we're not out there showing people respect. So I touched on all the different tools that we have. We have a lot of different tools. We have spent a considerable amount of time and money over the years to make sure we're doing research to find the best tools out there. We give our officers all the best equipment. Quite frankly, we can't carry anything else with us. We have so many things on our belt. We have so many things in our cars. We have all the latest tools that are out there. But again, we need to teach our officers to be proficient with them. We need to teach our officers to make use of the latest technology and the latest options that they have, because their situations are rapidly evolving, situations are dynamic, and so we need a lot of different choices. If you just go to a scene with one tool, well, that's the only tool you have to use. So we want to be able to equip them and then train them to be able to make their decisions based off of all their different options that they might have. But of course, the very most important skill that they have is using their brain. So we are trying to mature their brains into understanding, again, that what it's like to empathize with people and the need to empathize with people, and understand how to slow down a situation. We had a lot of questions about de-escalation. And again, that's another one. We can't just say as a department, we would be remiss if we just told you, oh, well, we do de-escalation training once a year. That would be irrational. As far as we're concerned, that's not the way a police department should function, in our belief. So in the Carlisle Police Department, we engage in de-escalation training in every aspect of training. Every month, every week, as officers are going through training, we are incorporating de-escalation techniques into that, to the point where the officers, they don't even think about the word de-escalation, because it's just part of their thinking. They know to take steps that others would call de-escalation. We just call it handling a scene. We know that as we approach a scene, the different things that we are supposed to start evaluating to determine if we can calm things down, or more accurately, create a situation where the person we're dealing with is given that opportunity to calm things down. Now, don't get me wrong. We're police officers. Sometimes we go to things that are entirely out of control, and we may not have the options at the time to be able to step back, depending on what's happening. If somebody is actively in danger, we may not have the opportunity to step back right away. But as soon as we possibly can, as soon as we can take and make an effort to allow the people involved calm down a little bit, or to be able to rethink what they're doing, or to be able to reevaluate what all is happening, we take those opportunities. One of the things I wanted to touch base on too is just our body cameras. We had a lot of questions about body cameras, and we've had cameras. Again, that's just part of our agency. We've had cameras in our cars since probably about 1999. And then almost 3 years ago, whenever there was a federal grant program assisting agencies in purchasing the body camera system, we jumped into that. So we've had our body cameras now for almost 3 years. We didn't have any pushback at all from the officers. In fact, the only time-consuming thing in even obtaining them, because you can't just run out and buy them, we had to make sure that we had the right policies in place, because it's like any other tool. We want to make sure that it's used properly. We want to make sure that the evidence is secure. We want to make sure that we are not violating anyone's rights with the body cameras. So all of that was taken into account as we entered into that program. And we do use them on a regular basis. We had some questions about, are they on all the time? It's kind of difficult to answer that. The camera is on whenever an officer is engaging with the public. Obviously, officers have privacy too, so whenever they're at the station or something, the camera is turned off. But whenever an officer is out engaging with the public, they have it on. It's part of our policy. There are certain places where we would not have it on to protect the privacy of others. There's certain federal restrictions and there's certain state restrictions. Things like a nursing home. If we're in a nursing home for a call, we're not going to have the body camera on because that would be a violation of the rights of everybody that were around in there. But otherwise, the officer, I know that there was some concern out there of officers having the discretion to turn their body cameras on or off. Well, they don't have that discretion. They're very aware of when they are supposed to have their body cameras on, and that is when they're dealing with the public, and if it's not in violation of anyone else's rights. And we have checks and balances in place to make sure that the body cameras are being used in the right way, just the same as any other tool. Which brings me to the slide here. We talk about a continuum. This is often called a use of force continuum. Sometimes it's called, sometimes they make it a circle, but more often than not, it's a resistance continuum. So what we talk about is the ways that officers can choose to go up and down this ladder, this continuum, based on what is being presented to them. So of course, as you notice, officer presence is number one. We realize that our mere presence at a scene can escalate or de-escalate things depending on what's happening. We train our officers to recognize that. And then it goes on down. I won't go through every single step there, but it goes on down the whole way down to deadly force. And there's many different steps in between that an officer has to be able to evaluate, what is happening, what are they faced with, who is in danger, if anyone. They have to be able to evaluate what steps they're going to take, and they also have to constantly reevaluate. There's instances where an officer may need to use hard, empty hand control to get control of a situation, but then as soon as the person is in custody, as soon as handcuffs are put on, it's the officer's responsibility then to back off and to be able to move back on the continuum and realize, okay, we've gotten things under control right now. So now we're just going to take a breath. We're going to take a step back here, and we're going to continue on, because we understand, and we're training our officers to understand, that an arrest, as an example, is a process. We are not out there to punish people. We are not out there acting as the judges. That's not what we're for. We are part of a process in protecting society whenever we're making an arrest. So it's not our responsibility to be able to determine if somebody is needing to be hurt or anything like that. That's horrible. And again, it goes back to my very first statements. We are training our officers to take their responsibility very seriously and to take force very seriously and understand the effects it can have on them, the person they're dealing with, the public. It is not something to be taken lightly. So we do an extensive amount of training. And again, as I alluded to earlier, we incorporate the bias training, we incorporate the de-escalation training, we incorporate everything else that we possibly can into that force training, because we need our officers to make good decisions at all different levels, at all different types of calls, dealing with all different types of people. And you may have seen hopefully, if we've been successful, you've seen kind of a pattern here. What we're trying to show you is in the Carlisle Police Department, we are trying to maintain a certain culture. We are trying to have a culture of professionalism and a culture that is built on the right leadership. We have throughout the years, we've always been an agency that really had good equipment and good training, but there is no doubt that Chief Landis, his focus is really on having the entire agency on the same page and having the right leadership in place to be able to make sure that all the different steps are followed and that there's a lot of oversight. When we talk about the force, something that we also received many questions about was use of force reporting. So we have professional practices in place for something like use of force reporting. Just to use an example, if an officer out there in the street right now had to use force on someone, they would, again, based on their training, their education, the policies and procedures, the tools that they have, we train them to make the right decisions using that force. Well, whenever the incident is all cleared, they have to document that force. They document the force, it goes to their supervisor. The supervisor then evaluates the force that officer used, evaluates whether the right decisions were made or the wrong decisions were made, or maybe it's just a matter of tweaking things a little bit. Maybe we can just remind an officer, hey, don't forget about this. Don't forget to use this. Don't forget to report this to the other officers there with you, things like that. But sometimes retraining is part of the process. Sometimes it is just a matter of just talking to the officer right there and just making sure they understand what happened. As that process goes, then the supervisor does a letter that accompanies the officer's original use of force report, and it would come to me. So then I look at it, and I look at it with a critical eye. I make sure that the officer, all of their actions were in compliance with our policies and procedures, that they are maintaining the high professional standards that we have in this police department. And then I will make decisions. Okay, do I need to talk to the supervisor, their supervisor, about this? Or do I need to bring the whole squad in to talk to them? Does this require agency retraining? Is there new information or new research out there showing that, hey, maybe we're not doing this right anymore because now there's new information? So now we'll take an incident and retrain everyone based off of that incident to make sure that we're all on the same page and we're all moving forward with professional practices and what's often referred to as best practices in different industries. But we're always monitoring those things to make sure that we're moving forward and maintaining the professionalism that all of you should be able to expect from us. And again, going back to that PLEAC certification, I'm sorry, I got off track there with that. The process then, after I am done with the use of force report, it will move up to the lieutenant. The lieutenant will look at it with the same critical eye. And then if he approves of it, he will move it on to the chief. If he doesn't approve on it, it'll get pushed back down again. And again, we'll address any issues. But ultimately, it ends up with the chief, and the chief has his idea of how the department should run and maintain professional standards. So he'll look at it and make sure everything was done in a way that is acceptable to him. And then all of that is kept as documentation then. And body camera footage, everything else, anything related to the scene at all, pictures, other statements from other officers, statements from witnesses, that is all kept. We maintain those records because, again, we want to make sure that we are learning. We are learning from anything that's going on out there, and we are learning from our mistakes. We're learning from the mistakes of others, and we're learning how to continue to do things in the right way. As part of that PLEAC certification, we are monitored for that also in PLEAC. PLEAC, because of the importance that use of force has in police departments, part of the oversight that they have on us is they have a lot of questions that they ask us when they come in to do their inspections. They have a lot of questions related to use of force. We have to show that we are following our own correct procedures. We have to show that we have the different training in place, the different equipment in place to make sure that the officers are making the right decisions and being provided what they need to be able to make the right decisions. And overall, within the agency, we make sure everybody understands the mission and the goals. We make sure that everybody is on the same page for the product that we are supposed to be delivering to the public. We don't take that lightly. A lot of the different things that have drawn national attention out there, those are things that we also shake our head at. There was another officer and I were just talking just a few hours ago, and he said something that we often share within the police department is nobody hates a bad police officer more than us good police officers. Nobody. Whenever there is a police action somewhere in the nation that is wrong, that is just woefully wrong based on inadequate training or bad attitude or anything like that, we all suffer because of it, and we hate to see it because it does not represent what we want in our profession. It does not represent what we want out of our officers here in the Carlisle Police Department. It does not represent the high standards that we set to be able to properly serve the public here in your community. So we have discipline in place. We have discipline. Sergeant Freeman talked about it earlier. There is a very specific discipline process, and it's not taken lightly. And officers know if they have maybe made a decision that was not in compliance with the way we want things to go in the police department, then they're going to have to get retrained. They're going to have some type of discipline related to that, based on everything that was taken into account for that. And again, we train up our leaders. The leadership in the police department is something that you just cannot take for granted. And I know that it's something we spend a lot of money on and a lot of time on, is training up our leaders to make sure that they are equipped to be able to look at their men and women and understand the needs that they have, understand the training that they will need, understand how to handle all different situations, because we have to be prepared for anything that comes. We can't, when you call, we can't tell you, yeah, we don't know how to handle that. We need to be able to give answers. We need to be able to handle situations in a way that properly serves the community. So we spend a lot of effort on training up our leaders and making sure that they're in the right mindset and they are equipped to be able to make sure their officers are in the right mindset and equipped to do their jobs. We've covered a whole lot of things. I'm going to hand it